All right, it's day 3 of our puzzle series, our puzzle challenge. Do a puzzle a day. And we're looking at this position where it's black to play. It's got h8 here in the bottom left corner. And we have a rook and a pawn versus a knight, a bishop, and 2 pawns. So he actually has 6 plus 2 equals 8 points of material. We have 5 plus 1 equals 6 points of material. We are down 2 points. But we have a pawn that's really dangerous that can promote in just 2 additional moves forward from the square that it's currently occupying. And our opponent is a little bit far away to stop it. So his knight, if he goes to f4, can attack the pawn, but it can't control these 2 squares that are needed to advance the pawn forward. So the knight is a little bit too slow to get there. The bishop controls the advanced square, which I think is the key point in this position, but it doesn't control the queening square, which is a light square. So, and he also has a pawn that's very dangerous to promotion as well as this other pawn that we're blockading with our king. The first move that jumps out at me, oh, and let me just point out one more thing. The king is also too far away. It's not inside the box, a concept that I'll explain in a future video, but basically, the king is not able to step inside the radius of the pawn in order to stop it within the next turn or so. So in this position, I'm considering an interesting move because we're already down 2 points, but we can potentially sacrifice our rook for his bishop to take away the only piece that he has that can prevent the pawn from continuing to move forward. So if we take the bishop on b8, he can play a takes b8 so that he gains some material back. And then we can play king takes b8. And after that, what can he do? His king, again, is too far away to stop it. If his knight goes to f4, we simply push the pawn, and he can't move to a square in one move that can control the queening square to stop the pawn. So let's give that a shot. And he gives us a check with his pawn. So in this position, we have a couple of moves. We can go in front of the pawn, or we can go above the parallel to the pawn on b7. And let's dig deeper here to discover, what is exactly the difference between these 2 moves. So if we go in front of the square, that looks pretty strong. There's nothing he can do to check our king. His pawn is protected by the knight, and he would have to do something that can move our king outside of the queen, away from the queening square, and also protect his pawn. So that may be involving moving the king to c5 and to c6 to protect the pawn, and then rerouting his knight through a pretty complex maneuver to finally give a check to our king. All of that is going to take 4 or 5 tempi to accomplish. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tempi to get the check in, to be exact. So by that time, our pawn will have long been made a queen, and we can start to counter some of these plans that he has to promote his pawn, and then also be able to checkmate him at some point as well. The other move that we can consider is to go to b7, in which case he can give a check to our king in a couple of ways. He can go knight to c5 or knight to d8. But either way, in that case, we would just take the pawn. So that move doesn't look plausible to me. He can also move his king to d5, and let's say we push the pawn. Then he can move his king to d6, and now we're running into a potential risk. Let's say we go queening the pawn here, and then he goes king d7, and now we're blocked off from that queening square because his king controls the queening square, and he's going to get that pawn through. Even though if we don't start delivering checks, which we can do with queen to d7 check, and that would temporarily force his king outside of the d file, so he's not controlling the queening square anymore. We can get in front of it. So it looks like either way we can stop his pawn. In my deeper analysis, I'm not seeing how he can get his pawn through. But intuitively, it just feels like moving our king in front of the pawn is the better move because we're more situated to stop him. So let's give that a try. And that is correct. And then now I think we just push our pawn. So wait, hold on. He moved his knight to uh, c5, and that temporarily leaves his pawn undefended. So we can take the pawn now for free, it looks like. And what is he trying to do? So let's look at a couple different variations, taking the pawn or advancing our pawn. Okay, those are the two main ideas. If we just push our pawn, he can get his knight closer, but he can't stop us from promoting. And after we promote, it looks like we're 100% in the clear. If we take his pawn, then he has an extra move to make with his knight, and then we push our pawn, and then he can get to either g3 or f2, and that would actually control the queenie square, and he would stop our pawn. The game would end in a draw. So it looks like we don't actually have the tempo to take his pawn. We have to just go forward with our pawn and trust that we're stopping his king. And I guess that was the difference back here. Had we gone to b7, he could go knight c5 with a check, and then we move our king. Let's say we move it in front of the pawn. Then he gets to here, we push our pawn, and he gets his knight to a square that controls the queenie square, just one tempo in enough time. So in this case, based on that analysis, I think we have to push our pawn instead of taking his pawn, and then we just queen, and now he gives us a check. So here, if we move our king, we can't go to that square because it's controlled by the knight. If we move our king outside of the queenie square without taking his pawn, he can push his pawn and promote, being protected by the knight. We take the knight, and it's a draw because it's the queen versus queen situation. So we got to take the pawn here, and that's the end of that puzzle. Hope you guys have enjoyed, and I'll see you tomorrow.